What's happening, boys? Nate the Feral Painter here, back with Astrorath the Grim. And for this, obviously I've done a little bit of kit bashing. Those wings that came with this miniature, I just hope to God, because I've looked at some artwork and stuff, and some look like they're part of the armour, and some look like they're meant to be the actual, like, physical feathered wings. And if they're meant to be feathered, the ones that came with it, they're terrible. Like, the sculpt was awful for the wings, so I just had to just take them off on this one. So yeah, don't hate me for the lore guys that think, oh no, it's got to have wings on. Yeah, I'm just having a bit of fun with this miniature. So yeah, as you can see, I've kit bashed it a little bit, added some elements like candles and chains. And for everyone that asks, I do use them now and again, these in my videos. The moment of oaths, this is just cheesecloth that is cut up, and you can use something like PVA glue or a putty just to set them in place. As I always do with my videos, I'm going to be offering some alternative recipes, as I know a lot of you don't have airbrushes. I don't know what's happening at the minute. I seem to be going through a phase of the airbrush police back on my case again. I just don't know what it is. They just seem to target me. Now, I know there's a lot of channels out there that use airbrushes, and I do check them out and go into their comments, and they never seem to get flack for using an airbrush, and I always seem to get the brunt end of it. Like, every day this week I've had people complaining that, you know, I've been using an airbrush and all that sort of stuff, and a lot of people saying, you know, my videos are a bit too hard to follow, the techniques and stuff are a little bit too advanced, and you know, sadly, unfortunately, I'm not one of those channels that's like an army painting channel or just use contrast paints or, you know, like the fastest slap chop ways. I always try and give you techniques and like advance you a little bit in your painting process, but again, I'm going to go over some of the other ways that you can paint this miniature. So for me, I primed it in black and gave it a zenithal prime of grey primer. The colour that you see me painting at the moment is just AK burnt red, thinned, and I'm just applying it through the airbrush. It's just because I don't have any of the rattle cans or anything like that is why I didn't actually prime it in the one colour. But, you know, if you want to follow this scheme, or, you know, you want to replicate it, then and you ain't got an airbrush, I'd just advise going out and getting the Rattle can, either Maphiston red or some of the colour alternatives from like Colourforge or Army Painter. But if the airbrush police FBI are watching, or any of you out there that don't have an airbrush and want to learn the ways that you can paint, because I do always say, oh no, you can just paint this on rather than airbrush. I have just filmed a video for when you've not got an airbrush, and it's just ways that you can layer up using a stipple method. It's really easy to follow, and the actual effects that you get from it is actually quite good. So good news for you guys, you've got one coming. But to the side of that, I've also got one coming up for people to get into airbrushing. You know, if you've never done it, you don't know how to do it, it's just a cheap little £40 airbrush that I bought off Amazon, and I'm going to be showing you how you can use that to utilize it in your miniature painting. Anyway, that out of the way, let's crack on with the video. So after you've primed him up and got your main colours down, I'd recommend going in and blacking out his undergarments or any other areas that you want to black out. Then I gave all the trim, which is probably the most time consuming part of this miniature. Yeah, this is done with Pro Acryl Bronze. This is such a nice, even though it's a bronze colour, it's more of like a warm gold. It's one of my go-tos when I'm painting gold, especially to base coat them out. And then immediately after that, I'm going to come in with scale 75 peridot alchomey, and this is going to be used just to highlight. Now, I don't go round every single part of it, and I sort of do it in this little scratchy, messy style, and you know, you don't really have to be neat at this point, because a bit later on when we've added some washes and stuff like that, it's all going to blend together. But I just slowly go in there with a brush and just highlight some key points where the light would naturally catch. So if you imagine, if you've got a light source above you, you'll see that it might catch, for this miniature, the lower half, like his legs that are sticking out, but any under parts, like under his back and stuff, don't worry about them parts. So don't even worry about going around and, oh god, I've just done all the trim and then I've got to highlight it all again. Just hit the key points and just do it in this rough little scratchy motion, and this will actually play into like the grim darkness of it, you know, make it look scratched and beat up and a little bit worn. Next up, we're going to paint up all the bone elements of his armour, because he has got some incorporated into there, and this little 3-colour recipe is one that I use for like 90% of my bone recipes. So we're going to start off, it's 3 colours. We're going to use AK dark brown, followed up by a highlight of AK decomposed flesh, and then just a very slight highlight of AK deck tan. This is just on the raised edges. So first off, I base coat everything out in the dark brown, and then again using that scratchy dry brushing motion, I give everything a highlight or just an entire dry brush of the decomposed flesh. And then just the lighter parts, I just give everything a little dry brush of the deck tan, and this will just pick out all your raised edges, but you know, you want to leave some of that colour in the shadows, and if you do go overboard, you can always go back to it. Now, as I'm going through these, you will notice that I have base coated the Moment of Oaths, and because of the actual cheesecloth, it does absorb quite a lot of paint, so for this I've just given them a coat of AK Light Earth. The metallic silver elements of this miniature was just done with my standard recipe that I always use, which is a base coat of Iron Warriors and then just a highlight of Rung Fang Steel. Next up, we're going to go to the candles, and you'll notice on the candles that I've added some actual drips, and this were done with UV resin, and it's just a case of getting some UV resin and adding some little candle drips in there, and then I'm going to get that deck tan back out and just base coat out all of my candles, but don't go too mad because I do paint in some streaks, but don't go too mad. So I just tend to just the ones where you can actually see the resin dripping down, I just sort of base coat that out because we are going to revisit these a little bit later, and I'm going to show you how we can make it look really waxy and drippy. Now, once everything is base coated out, we're going to come in with our first of the weathering / unifying washes, and for this we're going to be using some enamels. And yeah, I know people have heard the word enamel and probably clicked off the video now, but trust me, stay with me, I will give you some alternatives. But you know, a lot of people, especially when you're painting Grimdark, I think enamels are probably one of the essentials, and they're so easy to use. Like, I don't know if people think they're hard or if they're scared of them. Obviously, my go-tos are the villainy inks. Now, I know I'm affiliated with them, but naturally, I would be using these products regardless of my affiliation with the Grimdark Compendium. But the one I'm using right now is probably one of my new favourite ones and one of my go-tos, which is Villainy Inks Decrepit Filth. This is from the new Phase 2, the new 7 colours that they do have, and if you want to go out and grab some of these, then these are available right now over at the Grimdark Compendium. A link for that will be in the description below. I will talk a lot more about enamels because I've got a very specific video just dedicated to enamels and the uses and the ways that you can use them. But essentially, they are a solvent-based paint. What that means is that we can, you know, once they're on there, you can reactivate them with mineral spirits. So you can almost paint in reverse. So if you're making mistakes with acrylics, you're sort of stuck and they're on there. Whereas enamels, I can just, you see me on here, I'm just literally coating it all over the miniature. I'm being messy, I'm just letting it run into the crevices. And I've just got this on, not a wet palette, you don't want to use a wet palette. I'd recommend something like a Citadel base or a tile. And I just decant some of the drops onto there, and I add some mineral spirits, mixing it 1-to-1, just like you would with any acrylic. But rather than using water, you're going to use mineral spirits as the thinning agent. And I just work my way around the entire miniature, just slapping this stuff on. I'm not trying to be neat or anything at this point, and you will, because I'm being really quick and messy with it, I do get some little bits of pooling. That's not a problem. I just go in there and push that pigment about, and they do have a lot of working time. So if, like where I've just painted the leg a minute ago, if that was an acrylic, that would be done and dried, and there's nothing I could do with it. But with an enamel, I can obviously reactivate it once it's dry, and then just go straight back over it and just wick away anything that I need to do, which is what we do in the removal phase. But just let this colour, because it is a dark brown black, it's perfect for creating like loads of contrast. But this Decrepit Filth does have a wide range of like uses. You can use it for panel lining, or just to create some contrast or some further shadowing to your miniatures, or just some really dark grime and dirt that you might want to add to your miniatures. So the thing with enamels is, once they've gone on like this, you can see obviously it's looking a little bit wet, but give them around 15 minutes to dry, or you can use a blow dryer to speed up this process. And then once that's done, like I said, you can reactivate them. I get something like a Q-tip or a sponge and just lightly moisten it with mineral spirits. You don't want to be going mad at this stage. And then I just come in and start wiping away, just leaving it in the crevice areas, because that was my goal with this. I wanted to leave some in the crevice areas, but some of it I do let stain the rest of the miniature to give it that like dirty grime feel, or this could be like oil that's come out of his suit, or you know, it's got, like I say, there's a wide range of uses that you can use this application for. But I just work my way around, just dabbing, just being very soft. And no, you don't need to varnish your miniature or anything like that at this point. A lot of people say, oh, you need to protect your paint. You know, if you use a gentlest touch, then you'll not have to. But if it makes you feel better, then you can, yes, give it a coat of like satin varnish or matte, whatever you want, but it's not necessary. Decrepit filth will dry to a matte finish as well, and at this point I've just got my brush loaded with some mineral spirits for those harder to reach areas. And that's the nice thing about enamels, is you can continue to play with them and manipulate them and push that pigment around to where you want to leave it. Again, I do come back in just to darken up some areas where I might have wicked them away or just completely missed, or just to add some further contrast and shadows. I add a little bit more decrepit filth to it. For the moment of oaths, I came in with Villainy Inks Goons Grime, and I just let that soak up into the cotton itself, applying it a little bit thicker towards the bottom as though it's all been dirty and grimy. Again, this will dry to a matte finish, leaving that nice grimy look to your entire miniature now that we've darkened it up and added the decrepit filth and Goons Grime, which is what it should be in the 40k universe. You know, it's not all clean lines and absolutely prestige. If these guys have been alive for hundreds of years, they're going to have a little bit of dirt on their armour. If you do want to check out some of the villainy inks for yourselves, then I do have affiliate links in the description below, so be sure to check them out as well. Now we're going to readdress those candles, and for this I'm going to use Abtelung 502's Dust. This is an oil paint, and if you're familiar with enamels and oil paints already, then I'm sure you've painted hundreds and hundreds of streaks of rust and all that sort of stuff, and that's exactly what we're going to do for the candles. As if you look at candle wax, you do get that nice thick wax, and then occasionally you do see them streaks that are a little bit more faded. So it's just a case of painting some lines in, and then getting some mineral spirits with a clean brush, and just start to tidy up and thin and manipulate again that oil into these streaks that you want, and then you'll get these nice little transparent areas of the wax drips as well. If your candles have got little flints on the top like mine have, I just go in there and paint them black. I'm not going to do any fancy OSL like the candles are on, or set up a blaze or anything like that. They're just literally just going to paint them as the black flint itself. The face itself was super simple because we've already primed it in white like we did at the beginning. I just come in there with some black and I've thinned it quite down, and that'll give the illusion like it's a contrast paint, so you get those nice dark bits of the hair with those white showing through. And then just like we did with the body, I got some decrepit filth and just added some shadows in and around his cheekbones and all that sort of good stuff. And to finish this miniature off, we're just going to come back in with some Evil Sunz Scarlet, and we're just going to highlight some sections of his armor like the chest plate and stuff, just to make them pop. Nothing too fancy or like extra layers of highlights. We're just going to do these one little layers of highlights just to make everything stand out and pop that little bit more. At this point, there's just a couple of things you can add to your miniature to finish it off, and the sculpt does have quite a few gems around it, and for this I used Blood Angel's contrast paint, and yes, I did miss the ones on the axe before you jump in the comment section and tell me. And then also, if you want to add some text to your scrolls as well, you can do that. For the base, I just added some simple rubble to that, and for that I used Kraut Covers Ruins of Persistence, just with some Kraut tack, and then just gave it a one dip straight in, no messing about, and they actually look really cool. I'm aware that they're not available in all countries, but you know, if you want to add some rubble like this, you can find it in your garden, but there are a lot of other companies as well that do sell similar products with this. But if you can get hold of the Kraut Cover Base in Scenics, then I'd highly recommend going out and grabbing them as well, because they're just amazing. So that brings us to the end of this tutorial. We've not gone mad, we've not done any crazy techniques or chipping or anything like that, and you can see the results you can get just by adding a couple of simple base coats and a couple of enamel washers. Again, if you do want to grab some of the villainy inks, the links are in the description below, and whilst you're over there, please go and check out my 4th episode of the Astra Militarium's Cadian Shock Trooper course. I'd like to thank you all for coming along. Remember to hit that like button if you're not already subscriber. It really helped me out if you could just hit that button. Until next time, guys, I will catch you in my next video.